No, you don't?
No, I mean, I think you were street smart. I think if we're going to talk about it, you're street smart. So
I didn't know. I thought I was smarter than I was. We can say that for sure.
We always think that.
So anyway, hello, God bless and welcome. This is True Christian Talk. I'm Kevin Haggerty. It's my partner Jim Howard. We have it's Thursday, episode number 59.
Yeah. We need some music.
I wanted applause. I didn't want. I'm going to record some music. Some intro music for us.
Yeah, intro music. Yeah.
And I'll put that sound like the in the background. That'd be cool.
People don't know what that is
It's
anymore.
It's like the ticker tape. I'm reading my stocks off a ticker tape. Yeah. So anyway, it's good to have you guys. We're here in God Logic Studios in beautiful Tampa Bay, Florida. It's freezing outside.
Yeah.
I did my Bible study, my online Bible study last night, and there were people from Nebraska and people from New York City and people from Minnesota or Wisconsin. I always get those two confused. Anyway, they were in the Bible study with me, so I couldn't really complain about our 40-degree weather because one lady said it was like minus 30.
Think about that just for a second. It has to warm up 30 degrees
before
it gets to zero. You know, if we have 33 here and it warms up 30 degrees, it's 60 and we're happy.
Yeah.
You know?
Now you're back at the beach.
Yeah, you know.
Although New Yorkers are at the beach right now probably, and it's freezing and rainy.
Yeah, I don't know.
And they're like, wow, it's so nice out.
Oh, they're ice fishing. I don't know.
Well, the New Yorkers that are down here, probably, there's people at the beach right now.
Oh, yeah.
And it's rainy and 50 degrees.
Yeah,
But to them, it's nice and warm. So anyway, we had a show lined up. We were talking during the week about doing a show. We talked about it last week on the show, I think, about how perhaps the left is backpedaling away from some of their stalwart positions, particularly with COVID. But some of the things that they've really been politicizing and working, now all of a sudden they're kind of stepping back a little bit from some of the real extreme, because we're going into an election, a midterm election, so they don't want to seem so extremist right now. Well, there's a lot going on, so that was going to be our topic. There's a lot going on in the world. Russia's getting ready, it seems, to invade Ukraine. China might do Taiwan at the same time if that happens. So there's a lot of stuff. There's problems at the border, blah, blah, blah. COVID still around. I think it's endemic now. I think it's going to be part of our lives from now on, like the flu. But anyway, his approval ratings are in the toilet. He badly needs to look good. He badly needs a win.
Yep.
So, what's his name? Robert Breyer?
No.
What's the Supreme Court guy's name?
Breyer's his name, but hang on one sec.
Stephen Breyer.
Stephen
Breyer decides to resign from the Supreme Court going into an election year, because I would say, or it looks like Biden really needs that win. Turns out, well, you fill us in on what's going on, because it is almost cartoonish,
right?
For me, what in the world do these politicians think of us that this seems like a great idea for them right now?
There's a couple of things to unpack on this. One of the first things was that Breyer wanted to kind of like make his own announcement. I want to bring this out. Because Breyer wanted to make his own announcement that he was going to retire. He wanted to kind of come out and say it himself. Word leaked, and the White House immediately jumped on that. And they said, he's retiring, and Biden is going to keep his promise of putting the first black female on the Supreme Court. And the news went wild. I mean, the news just exploded. Now, what did that do? And we talk about this we talk about this all the time. We have all these crises over here that are not going away. Just like you said, Ukraine, Russians, inflation, gas prices, all this stuff like this that's going on that we have that we cannot, crime rate, 2 police officers just killed. There's been 9 killed since the first of the year. I mean, all these problems, but yet now the press is all on Joe Biden's next nomination for the Supreme Court. They're all talking about it. They're all asking the question to Jen Psaki. Everybody wants to know what he's going to do. Is he going to follow through with his promise of putting a black woman on the Supreme Court? Now, here's the problem I have with this to begin with. Why the only reason he said it to begin with was for political gain.
Right. It was during. He said it during the Democratic debate. So he was competing with super left-wing people at the time, and needed to say something really cool and profound. By the way, it would be awesome if we had a black woman Supreme Court justice.
Yeah.
So
that's not the issue. Please, let's make sure that we're perfectly clear on this. Look, I of course we're conservative, and so if we look at the the Supreme Court right now, we have an incredible Supreme Court justice, and all of a sudden his name completely
Clarence Thomas,
and I can name a lot of them. And Clarence Thomas, when he came on, this is how old I am. I saw the hearings on him. I watched the news at nighttime on the hearings on him, and he was unreal. I mean, he answered the questions like left and right.
And they tried to attack his character.
And then they attacked his character, just like they did Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
Just like they did Kavanaugh. And so, it's one of these things that I don't care who the person is. We were talking about this before we got started on this. Obama had brought up his list of Supreme Court justices. And Merrick Garland, who we know now, in charge of the Department of Justice, was one of his selections. And they kind of.
I'm not a fan, by the way.
I'm not either. But there were positioning and politics in that, and the Senate Republicans said, "Hey, we're not even going to vote on this because you got a new president coming along, and it should be his choice." Well, there was another guy that they talked about, and I know I'll tear up his name, but it's Siri Invasion.
Right. I think I have this guy pulled up, so I'll put him on the screen now while you talk.
Well, when you look at his credentials, they were unreal. I mean, except that he did lean left. He was but he was kind of like one of these guys that you take a look at and you go, wow, he's really qualified. I mean, he's very articulate, he's very smart, and all these things like this. So you would think that Biden would be looking for the best and not just say black female and lock himself into.
Yeah, well, he kind of stepped in it because he clearly said it because it would gain him political favor.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it.
Here's the problem. I think first of all, black and female are not qualifications for the Supreme Court, right? They're not qualifications any more than white and male is a qualification for the Supreme Court. So if we're not going to look at it that way, we can't look at it this way. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So now they've set he set the stage. He almost has to. We talked off the air. What if he doesn't follow through? What if he picks this guy for Supreme Court? Which even though he's a lefty, would be a good choice, it seemed. I haven't done any homework on it, but I trust your homework.
Well, okay, let's just talk about this. It really doesn't change the outlook of the Supreme Court.
Yeah, it's a wash.
They're only replacing one liberal for another liberal.
And I kind of like having liberals to offset the conservatives. Does that make sense? I like the checks and balances within the court.
Them going through the other day, and I didn't have a problem with what they said, them going through the other day and saying that private companies being forced to mandate vaccinations is against the Constitution.
Right.
But then one of the Supreme Court justices, Kavanaugh, switched and said, but if you work for the federal government, we feel like the federal government, because they're your employer, can mandate that you have the vaccine. So it's the individual companies can make up their own mind of whether or not they want.
And then the government can for their own employees, because in that sense they're an individual company.
Exactly. So
I'm not opposed to that, though, I don't think.
But do you see what happened? We have them where they're over here and saying, look, the majority of us say you can't do private. You cannot do it to private industry. It's unconstitutional. But
we can do it. So I'm misunderstanding. So I do have a problem with that. Here's my thing. And if I own a company, ABC Widgets, and I want my employees vaccinated, I think I have the right to do that.
Yes.
And so then can the government treat themselves like a private business? I would have to say no.
Well, when they hire and fire whoever they want to, they fall into that category of a business in a sense.
Yeah. I don't think we should be forcing businesses to do anything that they object to, or stopping them from long as they're not, discriminating, as long as they're being constitutional. The bottom line is, for me,
Okay.
everything has to be off the Constitution.
But you have to look at their decision. And I'm not talking about I agree with that. I'm not saying I don't think anybody should be forced to take a vaccine.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody should be forced to. We're going to say this again. We talked about this before. Both Kevin and I are vaccinated. Now we kind of think that maybe really when we look at, okay, that is a whole nother subject. Maybe
I think I even got COVID and it wasn't that bad.
I did get COVID.
I feel vindicated.
I know I got COVID.
I feel vindicated in my vaccine choice.
I got the Omicron and it, I had a terrible sore throat and I was lethargic for 3 days and then it was gone. It was over with.
So now you're like double or triple vaccinated. Now.
I'm ready to sell my blood.
Yeah.
I mean,
I have. I didn't bother going to the doctor. I didn't realize I was sick till kind of I was well into it.
Yeah.
And then it was kind of. I went to the doctor and it was kind of over before I got to the doctor's appointment. I'm like, yeah, I had these symptoms, but I don't have them now.
Right. I want to go back to the Supreme Court decision. They came out and said, see, here's why they did it the way they did. I hope I'm not going out here too far, but they come to private industry. Not let's just say when we say private industry, they came to look at it and say it's unconstitutional for the government to force an employer to mandate vaccinations. All right, listen to what I'm saying. So that took public completely off, that they could say, okay, we're not going to require it. But wait. The ruling was because they said the governor cannot force it. The employer can.
Right, exactly right, yeah, which I would kind of agree with.
See, yeah, so they kind of said, well, private companies cannot be forced. But because we're looking at the federal government is one of the biggest employers, think about it. They have more people working for them than anybody else. Yeah. They said that they could. That to me, you and I disagree with anybody being forced to, but in their decision, the way it was presented to the court, it made total sense to me because they looked at it in a logical way.
Yeah.
So that was not a political way. It was because of their decision they decided it that way.
So long as they are not holding other people to a higher standard, and I do this personally or take this personally, or advise this personally, we can't hold other people to a higher standard than we hold ourselves to. And exactly. I hope I don't do that in my life. And I have done that in my life.
Oh, sure, right? We all have.
So, we're gonna lock down churches at the beginning of COVID.
Yeah.
And we talked about this, I think, on God Logic back then.
Yep.
That I'm okay with that so long as they're shutting everybody down.
Right.
The problem
is
they didn't shut down. We'll use a Pasco County reference. They didn't shut down strip clubs and liquor stores.
Yeah.
So then they shouldn't be shutting down the churches either. Now, if somebody that works in the recovery industry would tell you it's probably a bad idea to shut down liquor stores cold turkey.
Right.
We don't want these people to just all of a sudden everybody stop drinking at the same time. That would be horrific for our communities,
Moonshine would be back in business. I mean, the moonshiners. Yeah.
These people would go. I mean, it would be zombie apocalypse stuff for some of the people I know would just stop drinking and drugging all at once. Anyway, so the Biden says a year or two ago that he would do this, and I'm sure it was very appealing. Like it's something that even I, as a conservative, like to hear. But he stepped in a little bit because now needing the political win going into what's going to be a dismal midterm election for the Democrats.
Right.
He's like, let's get this guy, Stephen Breyer, to resign. Well, he didn't even announce it. They announced it for him.
Right. Well, but he had been talking about doing it. This wasn't like they forced him to do it. He had been talking. He's the oldest one.
So what if he says, I didn't mean this year, I meant next year?
Well, I mean, he could, that would put him in a tickle.
But you can't say he's not under political pressure to do this. So now the Biden administration can say, this is our golden opportunity to have a black woman Supreme Court justice. My problem would be that we can't pick a Supreme Court justice based on the color of their skin. I think white or black or Asian or anything else, religious affiliation, sexual gender, whatever it is. That's not the criteria. Now it's pleasing in a political sense, but now what if he doesn't do this? He pays a high price. He has to do this, and then the question becomes: is the best black female Supreme Court justice candidate a conservative or a liberal, right? What I think Condoleezza Rice might fill that role pretty well.
Oh, she would.
So
but
then
she's not on that list that you put up there.
This is a CNN list, I think.
Yeah.
Which I watched their spiel this morning. A lot of these women, a couple of these women, haven't been judges they've been judges for less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
So, and now they're potential Supreme Court justices because of their gender and color of skin. Doesn't mean that inexperience means they'll be bad justices, but how do we know, right? So the bottom line is, well, there is no real bottom line. He's now. I think it's patently racist to say I'm going to pick based on the color of their skin or their gender. That's racism and sexism all rolled into one. You've put whoever he picks in a horrible position of having now going to be labeled, I'm on the Supreme Court because of my gender and color of my skin. Now she really does have some barriers to overcome that maybe wouldn't have been there if he had just kept his mouth shut and nominated them in the first place. Does that make sense?
I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying. I really think that we have to take a step back and go, okay, let me tell you a story. I'll tell you a story. When I was with the Norfolk Police Department, during the time that you would come on, the certain times you would come on the police department, they would take you out, qualify you with a firearm, give you a couple of little minor courses on what you should be doing, and then they would put you in a car with an experienced officer so that you could get a taste of what police work was all about and could decide before we put you through the academy whether or not you wanted to be a policeman. All right? So I get this black female. They give me this black female, Gladys Jones. I mean, I remember her name. And she had been arrested for assaulting a police officer. So my sergeant pulls me aside and says, because they always gave me the questionable cases, because if anybody's going to be honest with them, it would be me.
Yeah.
So he pulls me aside and he tells me, he says, hey, listen, she has been arrested for assault on a police officer. And I said, oh, okay. I said, what does she feel about police officers now? Because she is one. And he says, came through flying colors, all those things like that, interviews and all that stuff like that. So I said, okay, fine. So we're riding around in the car, and I'm talking to her, just a super smart girl. I'm talking to her. And as the night goes on, I look at her and I said, can I give you some advice? And she was like, yeah, sure. I said, you have 3 strikes against you right now. I said, you're a female, you're black, and you've assaulted a police officer. All 3 of those people are going to hold against you. But sitting here in this car, riding around with you for the past five hours, I can tell you right now, you've got the potential to be a good police officer. You really do. You've impressed me. But you have to understand that every time you walk into a room, those 3 things are going to be hanging over your head. And that is unfortunate because that is the way society is. But I said, when the shift was over with, I wished her the best of luck. She went and did well with the police department. But the thing is, she didn't come in with the concept of my sergeant pulling me aside saying, hey, the department wants to hire more black females, so you know how we feel about this or something like that. No, it was just, I'm just going to tell you. In fact, he didn't even, this was the other thing, he didn't even mention her race. He just mentioned that she had been arrested before for assaulting a police officer. So we kind of talked about after I said that to her, she said, I was young. The officer was arresting my sister. She was resistant. I stepped in to help her. I got charged with an assault. And she said, might not do it today because I see life in a different way. So because of that, like I said, she was way ahead of the game in my book. She was like, okay, she can make a good police officer here. But when we sit here and we say, like they did when I applied for the police department, they said, you're like 19th on the list, so you'll be in the next academy. And I was like, okay. And the guy responds to me is that we're trying to hire more blacks during this time frame. And so we have a whole list of blacks in front of you. And so, just be happy you'll be in the next academy. 3 days before the academy started that I wasn't supposed to be in, I get a phone call from them. They said, hey, you ready to go? We'll take you into this academy tomorrow. And my thought process was, what happened to all these candidates? What happened here? Now, that made me feel irritated because I must have been a good candidate because they called me immediately when they figured out these others. But that's the thing that we run into.
Here's a funny curveball to all this. Guess what the Supreme Court is going to be hearing? Affirmative action arguments.
So, affirmative action is going on right now.
Is affirmative action racism? I would have to say, by definition, yes. Is it a good tool? Maybe. But I know a lot of guys in your situation have been coming from a big city, New York City, that they were looking to get into a civil servant, which is half the people in New York want a civil servant job when they get out of high school. They don't have to go to college, and they would have to wait in the white line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is that fair? Constitutionally, you'd have to say no. Are they picking, and is that what's happening here? Are we picking a less qualified candidate because
of political reasons,
because of the color of their skin or their gender, which by definition is racism? Whether you mean well by it or not, it still is. That makes sense.
Sure, it does. Let me say this. I quoted this today in my Kingdom Business Alliance. It's a group that gets together, businessmen and women that get together. I quoted this today in my 30 seconds. 1 Samuel 16:7. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height, for I have rejected him. The Lord does not look at the things people look at. People look at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. That's the way we should be basing it on everybody. We look at the heart. We look at the heart.
So happens.
I mean, if they were to look at you and me, I mean, come on, we got to look at your heart. I mean,
they got to look at my my psychological state. Well, it just so happens we're sneaking up on the halfway point of the show already. So and traditionally at the halfway point, what we like to do is kind of now take this current event and look at it through a Christian lens, right? So what then do we make of, what then should a Christian church, a Christian family, a Christian individual make of this? So I see this and I think to myself, this could work out and it could not work out, right? So we may still get the best candidate, that is a black woman. Maybe he's got an ace in the hole. We're just not sure who that is. Or we are selling out the common good for the good of a smaller demographic, maybe, right? So, I'm not a fan of that. I think that at this level, I'm not a fan of the federal government, period, by the way. I think the state should be handling most of our business. But as a Christian, what do I tell my congregation? What do I tell my family? How do we sit down and look at this? And I think you just scratch the surface with, it's not the legalism of the color of somebody's skin, but the Sermon on the Mount, inside job.
Right.
What is the color of their heart, right? What is the intent of their heart? It's not the outward manifestation, but the inward transformation that we as Christians focus on, correct?
Correct. All right, so answer your question. I got an answer for you. Ready?
Yeah.
All right. God uses anybody. We can go all through the Bible and see how God used kings that were not Christians to expand his kingdom. I mean, we can go back to Daniel's time when they were captured in Babylon and Persia. God used those kings, even though they were not Christian, they did not believe in God. He used those kings to further his kingdom. When he told them not to do something and they not went against him, went into a room to be private, and pray, guess what happens? They get pulled out, put in the lion's den, and there's 2 men in there. There's 3 men 4 men in the flames. But anyway, God uses anybody. God will use this. God's going to use this. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no doubt. I mean, we as Christians need to be aware of what is going on. That's all I'm going to say on this. We need to be paying attention to what is going on, because they wanted to pack the Supreme Court. They wanted to put more members in the Supreme Court so that they could make it an actual political arm of the government, of the executive government. They said no. People said no, and they don't have the votes to do it. So this is one of these things of where it's a wash, like you said.
Well, if they're able to get rid of the filibuster, they have the votes to do it.
But listen, we've got a couple of Democrats, God bless their souls, that have said nope. we think that this is important.
Mansion and the lady.
Yeah. It'll come to me. Anyway.
Cinema.
Yeah. And God will use this, but we just need to be aware. You know, I feel really sorry for this nominee that's going to come up. I really do, because of what you said. If I were to, you know, if you were to hire me because of my color and not my expertise, that's an injustice.
It is.
It is an injustice to do that.
And it gets even creepier when you consider that they think that all white people think alike, that all black people think alike, that all Asian people think alike. It's Harvard University, I believe, and they're kind of throttling back on Asian admittance to allow for other minority groups to get into Harvard is what the Supreme Court's going to be listening to, because too many Asians, which are a minority, are qualifying for Harvard over and above the African Americans and transgenders or whoever else they want to kind of plug in there. So I just don't understand how somebody could feel like that's not racism. And I would never teach my kids, to accept that judgment on themselves or to apply that judgment to somebody else. And besides the fact that it's unscriptural and unbiblical, I think it's a very big mistake to hold other people to a standard you're not willing to hold yourself to. And that goes to individuals and groups, right? So if you do not want to be, you don't want people eliminated for being black from an opportunity, we can't eliminate that opportunity for whites based on the color of their skin. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so it goes to gender. It goes to if 12% of the American, something like 12% of America professes to be Christian, does that mean that 12% of our police force needs to be practicing Christians? 12% of our government, our Congress, 12% of the Supreme Court, which is a 1 in 8, so one of them would have to be a Christian. I think if you're going to apply that kind of logic to anyone, you have to apply it to everyone. Does that make sense? You can't discriminate against one group in your effort to protect the first group. And I think, and I don't think it's an accident, by the way. I mean, I think it's not outside of God's will. I think we're just getting ramped up into the persecution that the Christian church is going to feel moving forward, getting into the eschatological timeline. I think before the rapture, before the tribulation, there has to be a period so bad globally that we are as a global people in America, if we're still around even, we have to be willing to accept a one-world government, a one-world religion, and a one-world economy. So that's not just going to happen by fiat or by vote, but it's going to happen out of desperation. So before the end times come, I think things get incomprehensibly bad for us before that 3.5 years of peace comes along.
Well, and this is why we kind of do this show, is because we're hoping that we can get a revival going, that people get involved.
Yeah.
People just start to look at what is going on. One of the things that really bothers me more than anything else is that when people make these type of statements, he said he was going to have a black female running mate if he got nominated. It put him in a corner. Who did we get? Kamala Harris. Yeah. And her ratings are so low, it's unreal, you know? And
well, she hasn't done anything, and the things she's done, she hasn't done well. So I'm a little bit surprised she didn't do better, or they didn't position her to do better.
She wasn't that good to begin with. Let's be realistic here.
Look, we're TCT 59, and I put 58 in the thing.
Oh, gosh.
I always make a mistake.
You do.
So Kamala Harris has,
you got to change that.
I think she just doesn't, I think they really had no plan for positioning her better, or she's just so inept, and I don't know the answer, that you just can't put her out front. You can't put her in front of a microphone, because every time they do, something weird happens, right? The optics are terrible. Like they hired a bunch of kid actors to listen to her story.
Well, they've done a lot.
It's just weird.
She doesn't have the right answers.
She may be the Supreme Court nominee, by the way.
Well, that's a rumor that's out there. I don't see how they could do it because the Senate would vote 50-50 against her, and she can't throw the deciding vote.
Michelle Obama went to law school.
Yeah.
I don't know if she's ever practiced law, but she could be the Supreme Court.
Condoleezza Rice
is a good choice.
I mean, look, when you look
they'll never pick a conservative, but
no. When you go and look at the Supreme Court, the members of the Supreme Court justice, when you read their credentials, it's unreal. I mean, it really is. These people, have done a lot in their
super
life.
talented, well established.
All of them, every single one of them.
What about Beyonce or Cardi B?
Oh, now we've really sunk to a low.
No, they could be on the Supreme Court.
We have sunk
bro,
so low.
We could put Oprah on the Supreme Court because then she could also give us theological guidance.
Yeah. Well,
so
anyway,
she could be on the Supreme Court and like the Pope of America.
Back to the subject. Back to the subject at hand. It is sad. It is so sad that the Supreme Court, and it has been going this way. We kind of talked about it. We've talked about it. It's been going toward a political side. And I really wish it wasn't that way. I really wish that it was constitutional judges who look at it from a constitutional point of view. We have them make statements that you just shake your head and go, where did you get this? Sotomayor, in the argument over forcing, companies to have vaccine, or forcing companies to mandate vaccines, said we have 100,000 children in hospitals right now, dying.
It was 3,400 was the actual number.
Yeah.
So to say she was off is being an understatement. She's 97% wrong.
And you're wondering why they make these statements, except fear factor, political posturing.
Yeah, or uninformed. It's got to be. It only can only be a few things. They misspoke, which people do all the time. It could very well mean that, somebody just said the deadly vaccine, not the deadly virus, right? So clearly they misspoke. I mean, I don't think they think the vaccine is deadly.
But when I'm going to make a statement like that, I would hope that they would have done their research or they hire people to do research for them.
And we should hold these folks to a little bit of a higher standard. So if they misspeak, then somebody should say, listen,
a little?
They should be, bro, you misspoke there. You said vaccine, you meant virus. But they don't really hold themselves to any kind of standard at all. And if you're waiting for the government to keep the government in check, you're going to be waiting a long time. So Christians have to we got to stop just reading the headlines as Christians, right? We have to read the article. We have to unpack this and discuss it both amongst ourselves, with our families, and also with people that disagree with us.
Yeah. Come on if you disagree with it. Just have a conversation here.
I think two things that shouldn't be a secret maybe are your religion and your politics. We always say don't talk about religion and politics. I had somebody say as a Christian their Christianity was a very personal thing they don't like to talk about. Well, it's not Christianity. I mean, not biblically speaking.
Yeah, that's not what God said.
Yeah, so if you can't talk about your Christianity, you I don't know what you are, but you're probably not Christian, right?
Right.
Or I would say, unless the standard is you get to decide if you're Christian or not. But I think the Holy Spirit kind of decides that. So if your faith, your Christian faith, is so personal you can't talk about it, you might need to look and think to yourself, am I really a Christian, right? And so then should Christians not speak into politics? I think I don't think we should have a theocracy, but certainly Christians should be speaking into politics.
Yeah. So
Beyonce on the Supreme Court would definitely be interesting. So thank you, Jessica, and so Jessica clearly appreciates my dynamic sense of humor.
Yeah,
So I'm somewhat of a comedian, bro. That was a joke right there. So I didn't want, by the way, for the record, I don't want Beyonce on the Supreme Court. Maybe Oprah. Everybody gets a car.
No, I don't want Oprah on there. I don't want Oprah on there.
You get a vaccine. You get a vaccine. You get a vaccine. That'd be nice.
She doesn't have the qualifications.
Oprah doesn't have the qualifications.
Okay, let's go back to this just 1 second.
All right.
I want
to say, business.
Yeah, I want to say one thing. Here's the other aspect of it to me that is so racist, okay? Joe Biden, if you go back and look at him, over the time that he's been in politics, has been a racist from day one.
He's had some issues in that. Yeah.
Shoot, when he was running for president, he says, if you're not black, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. If that's not a racist statement, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and the crime reform bill put a lot of black people in prison.
Exactly.
For marijuana.
Well, he was he was against bringing kids in the segregation of kids in the school. I mean, he said something,
and he said when he said about Obama.
Yeah,
we finally got a clean, articulate black guy.
Or how about every time you go into a Dunkin' Donuts, you got to have an Indian accent?
Yeah,
I mean, he did these terrible things. I mean,
they're jokes. I mean, some of them are jokes.
They're bad jokes.
I mean, going into 7-Eleven and if you watch The Simpsons, the 7-Eleven guy's Pakistani or whatever. That's, to me, that's funny. That's harmless, but not for the president, maybe, or the vice president.
Really? They crucified Trump anytime he did something like that.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother episode. The standard, by the way, that we talk about holding other people to the standard we hold ourselves to, which is biblical, right? To the same measure you hold yourself to, you'll be judged, right?
Don't look at the speck in your brother's eye when you've got the log in yours.
So if Biden, what was his name? Trump. If Trump did, they made up stuff about Trump, and I wasn't even a Trump fan.
Yeah.
And if he did a fraction of the stupid things, we'd have Senate hearings right now impeaching him.
Oh, sure.
Over half the crazy things that Biden's done already in the first year.
All of our listeners out here, people who are paying attention, start watching Hunter Biden, because I think it's going to hit the fan here soon.
I don't think so.
Okay, well, all right.
I don't think the government will ever. Okay. I think the Democratic Party holds all the cards almost.
Well, I mean, it's going to change.
Who's going to check? Who's going to keep them accountable? The media's not going to. Our education system's not going to.
It's going to change.
I think there's a revival coming.
But
right now, I mean, this I told you in a personal phone call. The only difference between the Republican, I'm not going to curse this time, but the only difference between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, to me, is that the Democratic Party is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
They are a full flight from reality for the most part. I was a Democrat. I just recently, by the way, became a Republican for the first time. Hold on.
Yeah.
I've been an independent for 25 years, and so I can vote in primaries in Florida. I've decided to become a Republican. But I'm not a big fan of either party, except that the Democrat Party is so far out there, it's bizarre.
Okay, let's talk about this for a second. Whoever Biden selects, whoever he selects, are Republicans going to go and dress in KKK outfits and stand outside the Supreme Court?
No.
Or are Republicans going to scream at the door of the Supreme Court because they're disappointed in the person that's been elected? Or are Republicans going to riot?
Yeah, politicians won't.
Yeah, are Republicans? I'm not talking about politicians. I'm talking about people.
They dress like the Scarlet Letter ladies.
The handmaidens.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the handmaidens. That's what I'm getting at. Are they going to do that? Or are they just going to say, okay, I see what's going on here. I'm going to pray for this country and let's move on. And that's the way that we should be. But in November, we need to make sure that we vote on the candidate that is representing us and not representing. They have to be representing our beliefs. And like I said, I've told the story. I told it to you again. I told it to you this time. The first black Virginia governor, Doug Wilder, was a liberal. He was a Democrat. Came on the scene. I mean, when you listen to him, he explained things the way you wanted to hear it. He talked about things that you were interested in. And I don't remember who he ran against, but the guy, whoever he ran against, just did nothing but badmouth him. But Wilder came out and said we had a tax that was just a terrible tax, a tax that we got hit for every year on our vehicles. A property tax is what we called it. Mm-hmm. And he came up and said, I'm getting rid of that. And during the time that he started talking about getting rid of it, I was getting ready to pay one of my property tax bills, and I was like, I'm voting for this guy. Now, I'm going to tell you something right now. I don't remember anything else he stood for. I don't have a clue. But I voted for the guy. He won, and he got rid of the property tax. So, it's like you pick the right people that you feel like are going to do you a good job. We were energy independent. The economy was flourishing. Everything was going the right. Unemployment was down to the lowest it's ever been. Everything was going the right way. But we, the powers that be, we've talked about this, got together and said, we don't like the orange man. And we don't like his pointing out people in the crowd going, get him out of here.
I was one of them.
Yeah. Nobody liked that. But the thing of it is he knew how to work. See, and you were one of them, and I agree. But when you were growing up, the biggest mouth New Yorker that there was usually the guy that you would pull aside and say, I need this done, and he would go get it done.
Right. I would say Trump did I don't think he would last a month, by the way. I thought Pence would be president almost instantly. And he did a tremendous job. Now, here's an interesting thing. Road King says, the speculation I hear is Kamala is appointed as SCOTUS. Biden picks Hillary Rodham Clinton as VP and then resigns. Hillary is president. That would, by the way, Road King, would not surprise me. I'm assuming Road King's a Harley guy. I like that. That wouldn't surprise me one bit. And so then would it not be, if that happened, would we not be saying the same thing about the first woman president?
Sure.
That she got to be president from shenanigans, right?
Yep.
And so if we would just leave the system alone, would the cream rise to the top, right? Or do we constantly have to have our hands, have our fingers in everything, right? Social engineering everything.
Right.
Would not, if they would just shut up and not subscribe to this, or when they hear it, dismiss it. Here's the problem with the American voter. They largely vote uninformed. They largely vote over single issues, right? So even as a Christian, I don't vote simply because somebody's pro-life, although I was pro-life before I was a Christian.
Right.
So if you're a homosexual, do you simply vote for a homosexual? If you're black, would you simply vote for a black person?
Mm.
If you're a Christian, would I only vote for a Christian? If I'm a male, would I only vote for another white male? I mean, if you would do that, that's insane. That's racism in essence, right? There's a higher, right now, there's a higher calling, your country, that needs you to be logical and unemotional when you're making these decisions.
Yeah.
That chicken has flown the coop, bro.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you for a second. We saw it where they weren't out of touch in Virginia. And they were not out of touch
in Loudoun County.
Carried the whole state. The whole state.
Yeah.
So they were not out of touch. They were listening to what was going on. If there's one positive thing that we can say about COVID, one positive thing, it forced the kids to go home, online stuff. Parents started watching it and saying, what the heck are they teaching us? Yeah. They started seeing this and were like, this is terrible. This is crap. What are they teaching? You know, you have a school district that the parents come in and complain, about a book that you have in your library that is a sexual book. They complain about it and say it should be pulled. The school board says, oh, it's not that bad. Here, let us read some. And they said, well, read this page and this chapter, this page. And they start to read it and go, oh, we're not going to finish reading this because it's obscene.
Yeah.
What just happened there?
It's a school book. It's not a school book. It can't be on CNN, but it could be in front of kids.
It can be in front of kids. So parents are starting to wake up. If there's anything that COVID did, parents sitting in the back watching their kids going through this online training all of a sudden started to see what was being taught.
All right, now I'm gonna kick parents in the butt a little bit here. Christian parents should have been doing that the whole time.
Sure, they should have.
So we turn if your kids go to public school, and mine go to charter schools, but it's kind of the same thing. If you turn your kids over to secular atheists 7 hours a day, and then not be part of the conversation, and then be shocked when the conversation is, which bathroom do I use? That's insanity. That's on the parents. That's on Christian parents need to be part of these conversations with their kids every day.
Right. Exactly. Hey, we're getting some people out there, man.
All right, yeah. Peter says
Castellini
says that voting for Christians isn't racist, it's voting for values. We don't care what race they are. That would be true if Christians were unified in their values, right? So there are Christians that are Unitarian. There are Christians that are Universalist. I would begin the question if you're actually a Christian. But
sorry, Pete.
He's
going off.
So I do agree with you.
Yeah.
But that it's an it's a value, but are you voting for the Christian or are you voting for the value? Because it's the value that's of value, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but okay, I'm going to defend him here for a second, because if you looked at Trump claimed to be a Christian. I mean, he kind of came out there and he got the Christian vote because they all said it, and then he became, but yet you look at his past and you kind of go, was he a Christian or not?
Yeah, or when did he get saved would be the better question. Yeah.
And so, but we looked at the value. Like I said, I'm going to say this over and over and over again. I'm tired of politicians. I need a guy that's going to come in, do the job, and then after his 8 years, go home and retire, and we don't hear from him again. I mean, he writes his books, he writes his memoirs, he opens up a library, those type of things like that. That's why Trump attracted me. Everybody else was political. He had no political experience at all, but he was a businessman.
Yeah.
And he walked in and said, okay, this is wrong. Let's take care of it. This is wrong. We have people invading our country at the border. It's time to close the border. Look at what is going on right now. Oh my gosh, it's record numbers of people coming across the border. And this is not something that we're looking at and going, it's a black-white racial issue. It's, look, you want to come to this great country, come through the right ways. It is a political move. We're shipping them to New York. Why? New York wants to vote to let illegal aliens have voting rights in local elections.
Yeah.
What does that do? It just spreads it out until it becomes a national.
Well, there has to be for anything to be politicized, for them to expend political capital on anything, there has to be a political benefit on the back end. So why open our borders like we've done that, except that where there is some political gain or business gain, because I think we've opened our borders for business purposes as well. But so clearly, I think they're gonna relocate a lot of these migrants to red states where they can then, like I would say, purple states, probably not Florida and Texas, but
they've been
the North Carolinas, the places where it could go either way.
Right.
That it would behoove them to have them live in certain places, assuming that they would vote Democrat. Except that, strangely enough, a lot of the immigrants that I know are very conservative. Of course, I turn in Christian circles, so you'd expect that, but a lot of the folks I know in my denomination is very Hispanic. They are very conservative.
Well, and going back to what we started with, the Supreme Court retiring, political move in front of us, and what's going to happen from here. That is the question. Are they going to come out and pick a black female that is not qualified?
Yeah.
Except in popularity, or in liberal cases where you look at it. Look, we can talk about the vice president and her being, the attorney general over there. She was terrible. They talk about it. She was terrible. Mm-hmm. And, it's just like you go back, you said she was really tough on drugs, because a lot of people talk about that. So what does that mean? What does that mean? You're putting a lot of black people in jail. I mean, that's just all there is to it. I have seen, being in law enforcement, I have seen the difference that they do.
And she left people in jail because of the cheap or free labor that they provided for the state, which is another problem. Yeah. Now, if that's serial killers or rapists and stuff like that, it's one thing. But if they had weed on them, and you're keeping them, you put them in prison in the first place for weed and then keep them there, that's kind of weak to me.
But we're getting ready to look, I would like to see Biden one day just kind of like grow a set, but I don't think it's going to happen. And just say, I want the most qualified person If it's a black female, okay, great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Let's rejoice.
So
for her accomplishment. Let's rejoice for her
what about the most
accomplishment.
qualified black female?
That's what I'm saying. If it is the most.
What if she's not the most qualified candidate, but the most qualified black female?
For what? What do you
for
mean by
Supreme
that?
Court?
What?
So if there's 20 potential nominations that are black females, and they pick the most qualified
Out of the 20.
out of the 20,
But yet she's still not
at
the
the
most.
exclusion of everyone else. Yeah,
Yeah, but she's still not the most qualified candidate.
Across the board. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then is it worth it to us to have a black female voice? By the way, we got a black voice and a female voice and several female voices on the Supreme Court already.
Yeah, it's
so
not
it's
like
kind
we
of
don't have it.
kind of a silly argument that we need it in the same package.
Yeah.
But is it?
Oh, I agree.
To be optimistic, I'm hoping that if he does do this, that he picks, that there is certainly a well-qualified candidate that he picks, and not just some left-wing lunatic that not sure how many genders there are.
Well,
to me, it's
Okay.
Are you a constitutionalist? And
Yes.
I'm an Antonin Scalia type of guy. That if the document
Clarence
doesn't matter,
Thomas.
it doesn't matter what you think they thought when they wrote it. What did they write is the only thing we have to go by. And so when I study Scripture, same thing, right? Whether I like it or not, this is what the Bible says. Whether I like it or not, this is what the Constitution says. And if it's so wrong, the Constitution, not the Bible, it could be amended by a supermajority.
Sure.
So anyway, that's what I think. We got some people online here. Road King says the border crisis infuriates me. I met my wife online in '98. She was in Brazil. She comes in and as a bride, and 22 years later, we're still together. We did everything capitalized by the book, papers, fees, etc. I have a friend in Jersey from Nicaragua, and she's way more conservative than me, and she would call me up during the height of the immigration debate. And she would be so upset that she went through so much trouble to become an American citizen, and couldn't wait to show me pictures and call me and tell me. And now everybody else just gets to just rush to the front of the line. Now I'm going to be unpopular by saying we've, as Americans, Republican and Democrat, have created this problem, and we have to come up with a solution, a pathway to citizenship of some kind that doesn't infringe on the rights of the people that are doing it the right way.
Yeah.
But if you've committed a crime, or you commit a crime when you're here, you're gone, right? But otherwise, the truth is, most of these illegal immigrants, outside of being here illegally, are good people. It seems,
Well, they're looking for a better life,
and would contribute to the quality of life here, and would assimilate and so on.
And I don't blame them. But it's just like you said, they need to do it the right way, instead of through the dark of night being shipped to different places. It's mind-boggling. I mean, it hurts everything. Look, we live in Pasco right now. Pasco's going through this boom. I mean, there's construction.
Building something everywhere.
Yeah, there's construction, there's businesses, and all these things like this. So what happens? Your roads now, where it took you maybe 10 minutes to get to some place, now it takes you 25. Now it takes you 25 minutes to get there. So what happens? It's like we have to. We're coming. All the resources are starting to go everywhere else than what we were used to. And so we're paying more for it. And all these, so when people come in and flood, they were talking about it today. I was listening to some people on the radio, and they were talking about these kids, these Hispanic kids that are being placed in schools that do not even speak English.
Yeah.
And so who does it hurt? It hurts him or her. The student, and it hurts the other students, because now more time has to be spent on that child. And it's not the child's fault. To me, it's the federal government. And here we go back again to what we're talking about. That kid will not be liked by the students that are in that class, because now all of a sudden the teacher's got to give more time to that student.
They'll be resentful and then fall short on the needs of the other kids.
Yes.
So, and this at the end of the day becomes the problem. By the way, guys, if you're enjoying this content, if you think anybody else would enjoy this content, please share, give it the thumbs up, subscribe, these types of things, because we are not very well loved by YouTube. I think that's an understatement.
Well, we're not very loved by the liberals, okay?
Yeah.
So let's just put it that way.
We need to kind of force the algorithm they're never going to share our stuff, so we need you guys to. So if you would, do those things for us. We're going to kind of put in our closing arguments here, but just wanted to say, if there's anything we can do for you guys, if you have somebody struggling with addiction, any kind of personal problems, need somebody to talk to, you simply need prayer, message us at truechristiantalkinfo@gmail.com. It's really what we do here is to try to make a difference. Jim and I both really around the clock serve God's kingdom.
Sure.
This 1 hour is not what we do all week. We enjoy encouraging people to become more aware of their situation, their political situation. If they can be part of the political narrative with love and respect, generosity, these types of things, then we encourage that. The last thing we want to do is foster any kind of hate.
Right.
I don't think you're ever going to find that from us, besides the bad joke here and there. So I I really do thank you guys for being part of the show. If you got a topic you want us to talk about, email us, put it in the comments section. Maybe we'll build a show around it. Guys, you want to be on the show? You want to do it via Zoom? We got a whole studio here just sitting here. We can do it. You can do it in studio if you're in Tampa Bay. We can do it via Zoom. We can have you on the show, whether you agree with us or disagree with us. We'd love to talk, to meet you, maybe build a show around you. That's it. Jim, what would you like to say?
I always want the best for this country. I want the best for our children. The person that's going to be nominated on this Supreme Court justice, the person that's going to be here, is going to be on this court for a lot of years. The Constitution has been under attack for a long time. And we need to make sure that we protect this Constitution. If we're going to pick a person because of their color and not their qualifications, we've lost sight of what made this country great. We totally lost sight of that. And because of that, that's where it hurts me. It hurts me. I could care less the race and the sex of the person that they pick as long as it is the best candidate out there. Yeah. I probably wouldn't have picked several of these current members. I know I would not have because of their association with different things, their political association. But I can tell you when I look at their qualifications, they were qualified.
Yeah.
They were qualified. Now, they said things in the past that, were a little shaky, but in the long run, most Republicans and a majority voted for that nomination. A majority.
Yeah.
I mean, when we saw Kavanaugh, he went through hell. And I don't want to see that again. I don't want to see that in the next candidate. I want to see a person.
You won't see it in this one.
Well, you don't know. We don't know.
I don't think Republicans would act like that.
You know what? Republicans are starting to surprise me.
And I think you're right. So
some of the Democrats have started to surprise me.
Yeah, that was the show. Maybe we'll do next week. We put it off 2 weeks in a row now, but we'll kind of talk about how some Democrats seem to be returning to the center, right?
Yeah, and so
I might have to switch back to Democrat, bro.
I want to see this country. I want to see it be the country that it was before. Yeah. And there was a lot of, just unity. I want to see that unity again. And it's been a long, long time. And we're in a mess. And it's going to take strong Christians showing love of Christ to people to get it to where it needs to go. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I'm hoping that we pay attention and do.
Absolutely. Amen. Well, I want to thank everybody that's contributed online. We got a lot of comments, and that too helps helps drive the algorithm. And I want to particularly thank Jessica and Wendy who took the time out to say how great I am. I mean, it says, if I'm reading this correctly, thank you, Kevin, for doing what you do. And the other one is, Kevin, you are doing a great job. Is that what you're reading there?
Yeah.
That's kind of what I see.
Yeah,
that's what I see.
In the pudding.
That's what I see when I look at that.
You sound like a Democrat when you read things like that. You put your own words in there.
Yeah. It's like the guy that was reading the Trump phone call shift.
Yeah.
And he just added his own narrative.
Own stuff. Listen. I'm only going to say this one time.
Yeah. All right. We love you guys. We'll see you next week. I don't know what we'll talk about, but Road King, thank you for being on there. Look forward next Thursday, 11 o'clock. Everybody share, get the word out. Yeah. We'd love for more people to be part of this. We're so close to 100.
We just need, let's see, we got 78 right now.
Yeah, we need to get to that custom URL.
22. Come on. Help us out here.
And then then we can get the custom URL at 100, and then we're never going to get any love for these topics. And if you feel like you hear hate on this show, bring it up.
Yeah, please.
That's never my intention.
Correct us.
Although, like I said, you may have the inappropriate joke from time to time, and that'll be me.
That's from you.
That'll be me most of the time.
Yeah.
All right, we love you guys. God bless, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye. God bless.